Thank you and welcome this morning. My name is Tom DeSantis. I've been the project manager in the Niagara Falls Station project for, someone reminded me today, 15 years. But that's okay, because I certainly didn't accomplish this on my own. And I'd like to just simply welcome everyone for coming. It's a great turnout, and I appreciate you all for coming out today and sharing this milestone with us. With the city of Niagara Falls and the state of New York. I'd like to recognize Chuck Schumer is here with us today, and Brian Higgins, and Sam got here yet, but he's coming. Sam Hoyt from Empire State Development and New York State is coming as well. We have the Deputy Administrator from FRA and a number of people from Amtrak. But I'd like to thank some of the people who will not get up and get their names read off. All of those people I just mentioned, of course, are to be thanked especially. I don't want to forget our former Congresswoman Louise Slaughter, who was a early driving force. She could not be here with us today, but sends her regards and wishes that she could be here with us. I'd like to thank the Bridge Commission. Lou Holloway has been a great help. Chairman Ernie Smith, Frank Soda, and Janice Thompson are here with us today. I'd like to thank Mark Thomas and State Parks. I'd like to thank all of our MPO regional partners, and there's 7 of them with the GBNRTC for also working with the city to make sure that this project became a reality. Bruce Becker, thank you for your invaluable advice. Empire State Passenger Railroad Association. The City Council, the current council, Charles Walker Chair, Andy Tuma, Kristen Grandinetti, Bob Anderson, Glenn Chalupian. But really, it's been the City Council and City Administration for literally the last 5 administrations, umpteen councils, all of which have supported this project through all of those years. So it's a great testament to the city's ability to stay with a big project and see it get delivered. I'd like to thank our friends from Niagara County who've also been invaluable helping us and supporting us along the way. Dennis Virtuoso, Jason Zona are here representing the council, as well as Bill Ross, County Chairman. And Mark Rosio. Sorry, Mark. I want to forget you. Sam Ferraro is the Director, Commissioner rather, of Niagara County Department of Economic Development. Thank you very much. I don't believe he's here today, but I want to thank Clyde Johnson, President of the Niagara County Builders, Building Trades Association. They're going to be invaluable going forward now that we're under construction. All of the city department heads and all of the other people that work at City Hall that have helped on my staff and in other departments, city administrator, and others that have just always been there to make sure that this project did not falter along the way. Sarah Capon, Executive Director, National Heritage Area is here. Thank you for your support. And I'd also like to thank a number of other dignitaries that are here from across the border. Jim Diodati, Mayor of Niagara Falls, Ontario. Doug Martin, Mayor of Fort Erie. Gary Burrows, our Regional Chair, who could not be here. Region Niagara, former Mayor of Niagara on the Lake. David Eek, Mayor of Niagara on the Lake, Ontario, and our foreign and current friends at the Consulate General of Canada's office when they were in Buffalo, and still today, even though they're based out of New York City. Unfortunately, I know I'm going to miss some people that probably should be named and mentioned, but to all of you, a sincere thank you from me and from the City of Niagara Falls for all of everyone's efforts to make sure that this project is what it is and where it is today. And before we get into formal remarks by our speakers, because everyone's pressed for time and looking to have more great groundbreakings in the near future here in Western New York, I'd like to invite the dignitaries in the front here, and I'm going to ask Stephanie and Susan with Wendell Dushare to help us get them to the shovels, and we're going to go right to the groundbreaking ceremony. So cameras
We're going to go right over here.
to the ready.
You wear bright ties. Yes, exactly.
Don't tease it. It'll nip you.
Should we, Mayor? All right, shovels ready. Now, when I say 3, lift that there. 1, 2, 3. All right, do it again. 1, 2, 3. All right, is that enough?
You don't want to kill the job, Senator. This is a job-producing project.
Yeah, we're taking away jobs from labor by doing this shovel. So we don't want to do that. Okay, great. Okay, good.
The state of New York without a great team. You don't win games and you don't win championships without a great team. And one of our great and strong centermen, Senator of New York, Chuck Schumer.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. It's great to be here. I want to thank my colleague in the federal government, Brian Higgins. We work together really well for Western New York, and I want to thank Louise Slaughter as well, who before Brian represented this area was a real inspiration on this issue, Mayor Deister, and so many of the other local officials, both public and civic, labor leaders, business leaders, and everybody else for coming. The great turnout we have today is testament to how good, how important this is. I want to thank our Deputy Administrator, Karen Hedlund, of the Federal Railroad Administration for being here as well. And finally, our friends from Canada. I was thanking them for the Rangers beating the Canadiens, and they reminded me of the Blue Jays beating the Yankees. It's good to have them here as well. Now, today we're breaking ground on construction of a project that's vital to redeveloping downtown Niagara Falls, vital to luring more tourists to the region, and that is this revitalization of the old Customhouse into a hub for transportation and commerce. It's been a long time in the making. I remember when we first got involved in the project several years ago and got $2.4 million in federal funding for planning, and it's been a long road since. There have been a lot of bureaucratic delays. I remember, for instance, this is one of many. In 2008, the Federal Highway Administration turned what should have been a short environmental review process into one that took more than a year, delaying the project. And we tried to find out what was wrong. Nothing was wrong. It was just sitting on someone's desk, the proposal. So we've had these kinds of troubles, but we have all worked together. At that time, I went to the head of FHA, Richard Kapka, told him he's got to look into this to get it moving, and he did. And so we worked and worked and worked, and finally we were ready for the big grant, the big Tiger grant, which is the federal government's best and most flexible transportation grants. And we worked very hard, Congressman Higgins, Congressman Slaughter, and myself, and we got one of the largest Tiger grants in the state for this very project, $16.5 million, for what will be known as the Niagara Falls International Railway Station.
Timing is everything.
We planned that.
Timing is everything.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Amtrak, Mr. Engineer. Okay. Now you wonder why we went over there to shovel the dirt. Timing is everything. Anyway, this project is something the city's been talking about for 27 years. But in the last few years, together, we rolled up our sleeves, got together, and made it happen. It's a centrally located Amtrak station. It's a border inspection center and an underground railroad museum. It's going to bring tourism, dollars, and commerce to the region. Its location is key, right between the Main Street Business District and the Niagara Gorge Tourism Corridor, near the Whirlpool Bridge. This new train station is going to bring people That's a very important goal for our economic redevelopment efforts. As we all know, Niagara Falls is a tourist hotspot. Both sides of the border welcome over 12 million visitors a year. So having a train station way out in the freight yard where it is now made no sense. No sense for the passengers who use the train, but no sense also for the economic development and tourism growth we seek in Niagara Falls. But now we can all look forward to the days when Niagara Falls visitors pull in on their train right into downtown. So moving the station downtown is going to encourage tourists to stop over for a day or a few nights. And just as importantly, this is a way for Niagara to leverage its past to improve the future. The historic building to our left played a vital role in the regional economy when it was occupied. It drew more customs duties than any facility in America outside New York City in the 1800s. It also harkens back to a time when the Niagara Falls economy was built on the backs of railroads. Railroads made the Niagara frontier more accessible. Communities sprung up around the railroads. They brought people to Niagara to work, to live. They brought men, women, and children to see one of the greatest natural wonders of the world. And with the completion of this station, this intermodal station, rail will be a conductor of the economy, but from rail will come buses and many other types of intermodal transportation that will generate millions annually in tourism from visitors coming from Canada and throughout the northeast of America. So, conclusion, for more than 2 decades, an international railway station has been a dream for Niagara Falls and Western New York. Finally, the dream is coming true. We have construction plans in place, the money is in place, shovels are in the ground, all to make that dream a reality. And with this transformational transportation and culture hub, we can build an economy in Niagara Falls as great and as powerful as the wonder from which it gets its name. Yes, we're going to continue to make sure all the trains are running on time for the construction project. But even as we do, I can't help but looking forward to joining you in a few years for the completion of this project. And most people forget, it's not just that building. That's just the front. If you make sure you look at the diagram, it's the building all the way back that's beginning today. After 26 years of hoping, wishing, and praying, this day is truly a bright one. Thank you. Now, it is my honor to introduce a colleague in government who I work closely with, and I asked him to come up, Brian Higgins. You know, I said today, I'm going to wear a very bright tie. I'm going to wear a tie that's going to be even brighter than the one Brian Higgins might wear. Going for his. I lost once again. But he is a great guy and a great worker for Western New York. He has Western New York in his bones, and he has the savvy and know-how to take what we can out of Washington and bring it back to Western New York and Niagara Falls to make us a bigger, better, stronger, more prosperous and successful place. Brian. And I'm gonna have to excuse myself because I have to get on to Buffalo, but thank you all for appreciate it.
Before you run off, a little momentum for all that you've done. Mayor and the City Council, thank you very much.
Thank you, that's great. Beautiful. And I will put it in my office with pride. Thank you.
Thank you very much, United States Senator Chuck Schumer, just a warrior for Western New York. Big and small issues. Chuck Schumer is always at the forefront to help us as Western New Yorkers, be it here in Niagara Falls or the city of Buffalo, realize our full economic potential. Karen Hedlund, thank you very much for being here, the Deputy Administrator of the Federal Rail Administration. My other colleagues in government, Paul Deister and Charles Walker, the Chair of the City Council. But I think more so than anybody else, this day belongs to our Mayor, Paul Deister. Ever since I started representing this area, he has been incessant about the importance of this project, and for good reason. For good reason. This is a major transportation hub between an international city known as Toronto and a great American city known as New York City. And when you look at the improvements that are going on here, not only physically, right here at this site, but generally in Niagara Falls, for the first time in decades, we're addressing the problem with the Robert Moses Parkway, a parkway that has blocked this great waterfront city, arguably the greatest waterfront city in the entire world, from its water. We're going to remove that so that we have the full potential of Niagara Falls in its economic prospects. The improvements are being spearheaded by Governor Andrew Cuomo with respect to the state park here. Why is it that so many people travel to Niagara Falls, Canada, and don't come to Niagara Falls, New York? Those days are over, but it's primarily attributed to the fact that you have a great visionary mayor that's highly committed to the city and its economic prospects of realizing its full potential. So this is a great, great project, but again, I wanted to just recognize our great leader, Paul Deister, Mayor Paul Deister. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman Higgins. I'd like to invite up at this point a very special guest, Karen Hedlund, Deputy Administrator for Federal Railroad Administration. Obviously, with their help and the Tiger Grant is the primary reason why we're standing here today. Karen.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here this morning with the senator, with the congressman, with the mayor, with all of you, I'm sorry that Louise Slaughter is not here because this project was approved by my predecessor, Karen Ray, who was then Deputy Administrator of the Railroad Administration. And she said to me, I think Louise has me on her speed dial. So I know how hard the congressman worked for this project. New York's infrastructure is vast, and the people of New York are fortunate that its leadership recognizes the value of investing in the state's infrastructure, and doing that today will secure the promise for New York tomorrow. In 1912, at a People's Forum in Troy, New York, President Franklin D. Roosevelt said that competition has been shown to be useful up to a certain point and no further, but cooperation, which is the thing we must strive for today, begins where competition leaves off. In this project, cooperation came first. It was the result of cooperation between many stakeholders, and upon completion, you will have accomplished something that benefits the entire region. The competition aspect will begin when this station is fully up and running. Passenger rail will now be a more accessible and more competitive option that will improve the transportation and tourism infrastructure of Niagara Falls. Participating federal, state, local agencies, industry, architects, builders, and residents should all be proud of this achievement. And everyone will appreciate the improved access to this wonderful tourist destination that this station will provide. The U.S. Department of Transportation is proud to have provided $16,500,000 in funding for this project through our Tiger program. And this project, like many others around the country that DOT is helping to facilitate, is designed to usher in an entirely new era for safe and reliable and fast rail service. But we still have a lot of work to do. In too many places, we haven't invested in the passenger rail connections that travelers deserve, and that will be necessary to move up to 100 million additional people by 2050. Unless we change the way we fund transportation, we won't be able to support more projects like this one in the future. This is why Secretary Fox recently sent a multi-year transportation bill to Congress. It's called the Grow America Act. This bill would provide unprecedented support for rail safety programs and for projects like this one by investing $19 billion over 4 years in rail alone. But it will do even more. The bill, for the first time ever, will provide American rail with predictable, dedicated funding sources. This will put rail on a par with other surface transportation modes who have had that for years. And just as important, it will provide states, regions, cities, and communities with the federal policy and funding certainty they need to continue building a high-performance rail system. Rail stations like this one, where we envision a possible upgrade in round trips per day from 3 to 8, are critical to that goal. This is a vision we'd like to continue realizing through a predictable, dedicated rail funding source. And if Congress supports the Grow America Act, that's exactly what we will do: invest in our rail network, grow our economy, and create new jobs. Thanks again, everyone. Congratulations.
Now I'm going to ask to bring up another leader that we're all very familiar with, and appreciative that he is our mayor, Mayor Paul Dyke.
Thanks very much. I mean, I think those of you who remember I always talking about being on the high school debate team know that I often do extemporaneous remarks. But I'm afraid on this historic occasion, we felt it was important to leave something to posterity. So I have 4 pages for those of you who are planning your nap time. Once upon a time, the spot where we were standing was a very, very busy place. Once upon a time, the teenaged Holman Walsh won $10, some historians say only $5, for flying a kite across the gorge with a string attached that would then pull across the first cables for the first bridge across the gorge. It was completed in 1848, the Niagara Falls Suspension Bridge. Once upon a time, after that first bridge was replaced in 1855 by the Niagara Railway Suspension Bridge, Harriet Tubman led slaves to freedom in Canada on the Underground Railroad, reportedly carrying a shotgun to prompt those who got cold feet when the moment of truth arrived. They had to make their own move within earshot of the falls. Move they did, one way or another. Once upon a time, the village of Suspension Bridge was a transportation hub, or perhaps bottleneck is a more apt description. It bustled with stockyards full of pigs, cows, horses, and hotels, at one time over dozens, famous ones in the mix, surrounded the bridge, and the Germans and the Irish immigrants jostled in the neighborhood bars. Seems like a lot of pretty incompatible stuff happening in a very small geography, if you ask me, but that's the way it was. Once upon a time, as the weight and frequency of the trains back and forth to our rapidly expanding Canadian neighbor grew too much for the suspension bridges to bear, workmen raced against the clock to strengthen the new cantilever bridges ironwork. One of the ironworkers was Henry Sipple. The following appeared on June 15, 1900, in the Rochester Democrat and Chronicle report. Yesterday morning, between 8 and 9 o'clock, Henry Sipple, a blacksmith, fell off the cantilever bridge on the American side of the river in Niagara Falls and tumbled to the slope or abutments below, being instantly killed. At the time of the accident, Sipple was engaged in assisting in putting in the new columns and truss on the cantilever. He was working on a platform and in some manner lost his footing or balance and made the plunge to death. One reason assigned for the accident is the fact that Sipple was up nearly all last night to welcome a little baby born to him. It is thought that the loss of rest and the strain of the high position may have had much to do with the terrible fall to death. Henry Sipple was 35 years old when he died, just a few hundred feet from where we stand today. The daughter he stayed up all night to see born was my maternal grandmother, Catherine Sipple Tudor. Once upon a time, on June 15, 2012, Nick Willenda, 7th generation of the legendary Great Melendez High Wire Act, crossed some 1,800 feet on a wire cable strung across the gorge below the Horseshoe Falls. I didn't tell Willenda until after the walk that my great-grandfather Henry Sipple fell from a bridge under construction across the gorge 112 years to the day before his historic walk. I didn't want to make him nervous. I, for one, was very glad he wore the safety harness. Once upon a time, Main Street was bustling with traffic and commerce, and not a storefront was empty. Same for Queen Street on the Canadian side's north end. And a kid on a bicycle with no identification of any kind could ride his bike back and forth across the Whirlpool Bridge without much more than a wave and a howdy-do to the customs agent, as long as the customs agent knew the kid was going to visit his great aunt on 6th Avenue. Of course, what the customs agent didn't know is that the kid's handlebars were usually stuffed with firecrackers on the way. That was a long time ago. Once upon a time, the New York Central was the way to arrive in style from New York City. At a 3rd Street station, we wonder now why we ever let urban renewals enter the landfill. The Pullman dining cars, with their logo-marked silver service, were the very height of elegance. Once upon a time, trains and trolleys carried passengers from Niagara Falls through the Tonawandals and the then village of LaSalle to the growing metropolis of Buffalo, the city of light that had stunned the world at the Pan American Exposition of 1901 with the most dazzling display of electric lights ever seen. Once upon a time, as early as 1838, with horses rather than steam locomotives drawing the carriages for the first year, the Lockport and Niagara Falls Railroad ran first to Lowertown, then after 1851 to the current downtown of the canal-side city, with stops in Walmore, Sanborn, and Cambridge. All of this was once upon a time, and we all know that the good old days, perhaps never as golden in reality as in our polished memories, are in any case not coming back the same as they were before. That's just the way the world is. Fair enough. But enough about the past. Let me speak for a moment about the future. Someday soon, the busy sounds of construction will fill the air as laborers and tradesmen, operating engineers, carpenters, electricians, plumbers, masons, and yes, iron workers too, take up their tools once again to write the latest chapter in the history of the Great River Crossing. Someday soon, joined to the Civil War-era Customhouse by an atrium of glass, a new Niagara Falls rail station and transportation center will arise to replace the shoddy current station, a freight warehouse if the truth be known, with a facility worthy of an internationally famous destination. Someday soon, visitors will step off the train not in an industrial district far from the city center, but on the very lip of the Great Niagara Gorge, just a short hop from the downtown center and the falls itself. Someday soon, they will be greeted on disembarking by an interpretive center commemorating the deeds of Harriet Tubman and the other heroes of the Underground Railroad, and have a chance to cross the Niagara swirling waters at what runaway slaves once called the Promised Land. Someday soon, there will be trains again running between Buffalo and Niagara Falls, opening up job opportunities at all the stops in between for people who don't own cars but want a chance to work. Someday soon, Main Street will come alive again, providing all the goods and services that train riders need. Someday soon, as our high-speed rail improvements advance, New York City and Toronto won't seem so far apart, and crossing the border by train in either direction won't be the most time-consuming part of the trip. And being the border crossing station on the line will be a very good place to be. Someday soon, excursion trains will take the carless visitors to the locks in Lockport and to the wine trail beyond, giving them a chance to sample the local varieties with only the engineer getting stuck as designated driver. Someday soon, cyclists will jump off the train, eager to retrieve their bikes from the baggage car and speed off along the gorge rim trail, upstream to the falls, or downstream to Lewiston and Youngstown. Hikers will cross the street and immediately descend the steps into the gorge to hike the trails there, joined by fishermen and bird watchers and everyone else who enjoys the great outdoors. Someday soon, on a Sunday afternoon in November, Bills fans from Southern Ontario will pass through the station on the way to root for their favorite American team, wherever it ends up playing. On a Friday night in February, they will head to First Niagara to cheer for the Sabres, or I suppose for the Leafs if so inclined. And if it snows hard on the way home, they can watch the snowflakes falling through the passenger car window. Now that's the way to travel. just a few short years ago, it seemed like these wonderful some days were just fantasy. After all, the city's been trying to build a new station since 1986. But through the unrelenting efforts of some dedicated and determined people, we are here to break ground today. Thanks to Dave Ducher, Mark Molnar, and especially Stu Sherwood and the great team at Wendell for years of painstaking work to make our plans a reality. We could not have done it without them. Thanks to Bruce Becker of the Empire State Passengers Association and Gladys Gifford and Doug Funky of the Citizens Regional Transit Corporation, who never ever lost faith in the future of passenger rail. Thanks to Regional Chair of the Niagara Region, Gary Burrows, former Lord Mayor of Niagara-on-the-Lake and past Chair of the Niagara Parks Commission and Shaw Festival, who has championed the improvement of the cross-border rail service for many years. And to His Worship, my colleague Jim Diodati, Mayor of our sister city across the river, to his predecessor Ted Salsi, to current Ward Mayor David E., and to the Ward Mayor, and to His Worship the Mayor of Fort Erie, Ontario, Doug Martin, all of whom came here today, and we're very, very honored, gentlemen, by your presence. And thanks to all the other Canadian officials who gave us help and encouragement along the way. Thanks to your advocacy, our two great nations will be drawn even closer together by this great ribbon of steel. Thanks to Governor Andrew Cuomo, his regional representative Sam Hoyt, a longtime advocate for rail, and State DOT Commissioner Joan McDonald for closing a funding gap at the very end of the process of getting the project started. Thanks to Karen Ray, who helped push the project at both the state and federal levels. Thanks to our great Senator Charles Schumer, to our great Congressman Brian Higgins, and our former great Congresswoman Louise Slaughter. They not only fought for and secured the bulk of the funding for this project, the $16.5 million Tiger II grant, but helped guide it through the bureaucratic maze of Washington when the whole thing was, pardon the terrible pun, in danger of going off the tracks. And thank you to our great President, Barack Obama, who made it his business, in his first ever budget as president, to make sure there was funding for high-speed rail. It was your vision, Mr. President. Today, the first high-speed rail dollars that were spent in New York State start going into the ground and into the economy. Thanks to the many citizens who turned up at council meetings and the ballot box where necessary to make sure that the city stayed the course. Thanks to council members past and present who supported the project at critical times. A special thanks to the commissioners and supporters of the Underground Railroad Heritage Commission, to the ever-faithful members of the Main Street Business Association, and especially to the men and women of the Niagara County building trades. You help build the future in more ways than one. Finally, a very special thanks to two individuals with whom I have shared every step of this long and winding road, and without whom we would not be here today. Council Chairman Charles Walker, the City Planner Tom DeSantis are men of vision and dedication who would not let a great idea die. My friends, I salute you. The road has been long and twisted, but I can see the end in sight. Hallelujah and amen. Look at those grainy photographs in the history books of people standing around at groundbreakings and ribbon cuttings and wonder how many of them realized at the time the significance of what they were there to witness. I suspect some events that were expected to be historic turned out to be less significant than expected, and some events that drew little attention at the time turned out to be major turning points. I feel confident that today's event falls into the fortuitous third category. Occasions where pretty much everyone in attendance is happy to be there because they know history is being made, a better future is being created, and they were blessed to live to see it happen. Thank you for coming here today to share in this great event in our city's and region's history. May all your good memories last a good long time, and God bless you.